Hello, everyone. It's Alec here. I just wanted to jump in to frame today's episode. I'm really excited for you to listen to my sit-down conversation with Joe Crandall. Joe is the CEO of Leviathan and the executive chairman of Greencastle Associates Consulting, a former Navy SEAL, one smart individual, and somebody that can take the 30,000-foot view and make it really practical for you to be able to take home. We're talking about the tough decisions that most leaders avoid. We talk about how to put the right people in the right seats, why radical candor matters, and how clear expectations create stronger teams and better outcomes. You're going to love this episode. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Activating Greatness, the show where we dig into what it really takes to lead with purpose, inspire performance, and create lasting impact. As always, I'm your host, Alec McChesney, and every episode we sit down with leaders, thinkers, and change makers who are unlocking potential in themselves, their teams, and their organizations. Here, we talk about the real stuff: leadership that drives culture, strategy that creates momentum, and the mindset that turns good intentions into game-changing results. Because greatness, it isn't a title, it's a choice. It's something you activate every single day. So thank you. Thank you for listening, for showing up, and for being part of a community of leaders who refuse to settle for good enough. Now, let's dive in and meet today's incredible guest. Today's guest is Joe Crandall, CEO of Leviathan and executive chairman of Greencastle Associates Consulting. Joe is a former Navy SEAL turned business leader and operator known for building disciplined, high-performing organizations that execute when the margin for error is thin. He previously served as CEO of Greencastle, where he led the firm's transformation into a premier strategy execution consultancy, and now oversees a portfolio of veteran-owned companies through Leviathan, all aligned around clarity of mission, operational discipline, and accountability. And we're going to talk about the tough decisions. We're going to talk about decisions that most leaders avoid. We're going to talk about how to put the right people in the right seats, why radical candor matters, and how clear expectations create stronger teams and better outcomes. But before we do all of that, Joe, everybody who listens to this knows I can get excited and I want to start running. But before we do it, I would love to have you further introduce yourself, and also just want to say thank you so much for spending some time with me and the Activating Greatness audience today.
Well, no, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to the discussion. But I think one of the key things that I want to bring out is that Greencastle Consulting is all veteran company. So every person we've hired in the last 7 years has been a veteran, and that's an important factor from the standpoint that the veterans are really good at solving big problems and not really getting too gummed up on small little things and some of the things that we see our clients needing help with. So I like to say we're the nation's largest all veteran company, and I'm going to continue to say that until somebody tells me otherwise. But beyond that, your introduction was spot on.
Oh, I love it. And, to take us down a tangent right out of the gate, I had a CEO on from Citizens Inc., John Stenberg, just a couple of weeks ago. His episode aired the last week of March, or second to last week of March. And when I asked him who we should interview next, he had one answer. And then he talked about him being a veteran and wanting to have more veteran leadership stories on the podcast. And I briefed him on our upcoming episode offline, and I know he's really looking forward to it. And I'm certain that we can have some of that conversation today. But as we go forward, and to your point, having an organization of veterans, I'm sure there are things that you guys are comfortable doing from a decision-making process, because there's one answer, there's one decision. We need to move forward with it. And talking with Joe Whitty on our team here at Velocity, some of his background is in the same perspective of, hey, this is the decision that has to be made. Let's make the decision. Let's move forward. And you, Joe, are a strong believer in our first prep call of the right person, right seats.
Oh
We
yeah.
talk about traction, right butt, right seat, and that it's actually, one of the most human things that a leader can do. So I want to start there. How should leaders think about evaluating whether someone is in the right seat, whether they're in the right role, and frankly, what happens if they're not in the right seat?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from the get go, before you even get to that point, you have to really define what your culture is. Because if a person
Mm,
doesn't pass the first part of the people analyzer, which is your culture and your core values, you really have to ask yourself, why are they even on the team? And so once you've done that and you've identified your core values and you've identified what it means to be on this team, what are your standards? What are the things that you're expecting them to do and not do? Then it gets into what Traction calls the get it, the want it, and the capacity to do it. And
yeah.
uh, the Traction methodology says if a person doesn't pass any one of those categories, that you should just look for somebody new and try with a different person. When I for us, the culture part was the most important piece from the standpoint of if they weren't part of the culture, we really didn't move either forward with them in an interview process, or we tried to find a location within the ecosystem of companies where they would be successful. Once you get to the get it, the want it, and the capacity to do it, the get it and the want it are extremely important. If they don't have those, in my opinion, then they're not going to do a good job. The capacity to
Mm,
do it was one that we were willing to have a little bit more grace on, because we were hiring veterans that potentially didn't have the skill set that we needed them to have at the time, but they had the capacity to grow into it. So we were willing to take on veterans that would be able to have the capacity to do it in a certain period of time. And
mm,
but the I'm a big believer that from a business standpoint, 80% or plus of your problems come from the wrong people or the wrong processes. And if you get the people down, the processes are next. And if you can do that and meld the two together, you create some good business systems that allow you to have a company of high accountability. You'll be amazed at what the team can accomplish, and also accomplish without you being there on a daily basis.
mm. So much good right out of the gate there, Joe. But I want to double click on the fact that you jumped right to culture. Right, we
Yeah.
talk of culture, and yet so often the culture piece of the puzzle is a disconnect for a lot of organizations. They might say, hey, we have a great culture, or culture is a word on the wall, but it's not something that actually presents a hiring lens, frankly, a firing lens or a promotion lens. Is that something that you took from your time in service with the Navy SEALs? What led you to say, hey, culture is the foundation of us being successful, and culture is the foundation of how we're going to build and hire and establish our presence inside of the business?
Yeah, actually, it is something I learned as a young platoon commander back in the late 90s. We had our platoon was doing really well, Charlie Platoon, and this was all before 9/11, back when I was much younger. And we had one guy that just wasn't living up to standards, and really he was dragging the performance of the whole platoon down. And it took me a while to actually build up the paperwork and the documentation to finally remove this person from the platoon. And as soon as that happened, the level of performance, the level of accountability went through the roof. And it was
Mm,
because we were no longer having to work to the standards of an underperformer. And doesn't mean he was a bad guy, doesn't mean that he wasn't going to be successful somewhere else. It just meant for our platoon at that point in time, he was the wrong person. And so by learning that early, I've kind of carried that through my entire career, where I've had to have just difficult conversations with nice, good people, but they just didn't either do the job I needed them to do, or they provided friction, and you know that the team's going to be better if they can be successful somewhere else. And so I boiled it down to pretty much a pretty easy way to think about it is after if you're putting somebody through the people analyzer, fundamentally what you're asking is are they adding to the energy of the team naturally, or are they drawing away from it, or are they sucking energy
Mm,
in? And if they're neutral or sucking energy in, you have to think long and hard. Why is that person part of your team?
mm. So much that other leaders can learn from that story about your platoon. And one of the things that we focus on at Velocity is how to retain top performers, how to
Yeah,
retain
yeah,
the high potential emerging leaders inside of the organization. And one of the things that the data shows us over and over again is that retaining low performers, retaining individuals who are hurting the culture is actually one of the greatest risks to
right.
your top performers.
Oh yeah,
And it's a clear pathway and it's very easy for everybody to understand, and yet leaders hesitate to make those calls. They hesitate to make the tough decision, to have that conversation, to have the paperwork, to have the frankly the process to remove that individual from their team or from their organization.
yeah.
Why is that, Joe? Why do we struggle with that? And what is a way for us to be able to have those hard conversations and make those hard decisions a little bit easier?
I think primarily for leaders, it's sometimes really tough to tell somebody that they're not doing a good job, and
Mm,
the longer you let that go on, the harder it is to have that conversation. And Kim Scott book, Radical Candor, along with the EOS methodology, has really allowed us to set the standards at which we want a person to perform, and then also have quick and directed conversations when they're not. It's very once
mm,
you've identified that person's role and what they're responsible for, and if they're not doing that, you can have a bevy of conversations that start out as verbal and then just kind of work their way up to the ultimate potentially leaving the company. But the idea is that you're giving that person every opportunity to course correct, and you're giving them the tools, you're giving them those kind of things that they need. One of the biggest questions I always ask when somebody's struggling and a leader comes to me and says, "Hey, this person just isn't getting it," I ask them, "Did you show them what right looks like?" And if they know what right looks like and they just can't do it, then it might be a situation where that person is never going to get it. And if you just continue to have those conversations, it should never be a surprise that when a meeting for myself or for the current CEO, if it pops up on your schedule to meet with me, that's kind of you should expect to be fired, because you've had those conversations and you've been told that this is the potential outcome, and if you haven't made those corrective behaviors, then it's the logical outcome. And I'll tell
mm,
you, Greencastle itself has tremendous retention. I think we're less than 0.5% turnover on a month-to-month basis. So we're like 99.5% effective. And the other thing is when people do leave the company from a voluntary status, they want to go try to do something else. We have, I think, over a dozen who we call boomerangs, where they've come back to the company as a returning employee. And so I think by holding people accountable, creating the conversation, and I think Kim Scott, or it might have been Gino Wickman, I can't remember which one, but if you're coming at it from a position of compassion and really wanting to help that person, then it shouldn't be a hard conversation. Think of uh,
mm,
think of like if you and your buddy are getting ready to go do a big presentation, and he's got a huge chunk of salad in his teeth. Are you going to say something to him? Yeah, because you
mm,
care about his performance. You care how people are going to perceive him. Or if you don't and you let him get up there and he has this huge chunk of salad, then really the question is are you living up to the culture ideals that your company has set out? And so it's really about being compassionate. And Gino Wickman does call it making decisions from a position of love versus a position of fear. And
mm,
and Kim Scott's book goes through the quadrants of ruinous empathy and all these other things. And most most organizations suffer from ruinous empathy, where they don't want to say
Mm.
something to hurt somebody. Oh, it's only the first time he's done it, or it's really gonna hold their career back. When in reality, it probably isn't only the first time they've done it. Maybe somebody else has observed it, or maybe their career deserves to be held back because they're incompetent.
Mm. I wanna go back to the beginning of your answer here because I think that this needs to be said a handful of times. Did you show them what right looks like? Is the question that you asked of a manager on the team. And a lot of times that's the biggest hurdle is that we haven't had that conversation.
Right.
We see it not working. Joe Woody on our team talks about the four levels of incompetence, right?
Yeah.
And competence, and there's different levels to that. But you have to show them what right looks like, and you have to be able to give that feedback in real time, so that way there aren't surprises, and you have to give a couple of those chances for somebody to grow into the capacity to do the work, like you mentioned. What we see at Velocity is that too many managers have been promoted without understanding what it takes to actually be a successful manager. So they're not comfortable giving that feedback in real time. They're not
Yeah.
comfortable picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, I just saw how you handled this. I want to walk through what should have happened versus what did happen." Or even asking the question, "Hey, how did you feel that one went?" Right? Like
Right.
being able to have those tougher conversations. And we talk about it as a tough conversation in real time is a lot easier than a tough conversation that you put off for 6 months and there
Yeah.
were genuine struggles, and now there's surprises. So is that something not only within the organizations that you work with, but also clients and different mentorship that you've given? Is that something that you're really focused on is, hey, let's do real-time feedback. Let's capture it right then and there. So that way it's understood that, hey, I might have misstepped there and here's an opportunity to be better.
Yeah. The longer you go to saying something when you've noticed behavior, the harder it is for that other person to hear
Mm,
it. So imagine if you did something wrong 3 weeks ago, and I just now have built up the courage to say something to you. You're going to walk away going, well, that son of a, like, why didn't he talk to me back then? And even high
yeah.
performers want to know when they're not living up to standards, because they might be really good at six tasks, but that seventh one they're kind of faltering on, and so they want to know that they need help with it, or maybe you remove it off their plate and give it to somebody that's really good at it. You brought up a good point that a lot of organizations, they will promote people based upon the performance in their current role, not in the potential of their future role. And so that's the classic, hey, I took my top sales guy and made him the sales manager. Just because he can sell doesn't mean he can manage people. And
Yep.
sometimes people also get promoted into the Peter principle. They get promoted into incompetence, where at a certain level
Mm,
they're excelling, and then at the next level they start to falter and start to have issues. And the right thing might be to say, hey, listen, it's we made a mistake. We need to move you back to where you were so you'll be more successful, and we're going to hire somebody in above you, or find a different person for that role. And that's the tough thing, is one, admitting you made a mistake, and two, really telling that person, in your current skill set, in your current capabilities, you're at the pinnacle here, right?
mm,
And if they listen to that and they want more and they want to move their careers along, unfortunately, it might be something where they need to go out and hone some skills at a different organization, or they might need to go to school, or they might need some mentoring or something like that. But a lot of the times, people, once they've hit that ceiling, they get really discouraged, and it's really just a matter of finding their path and knowing what they're good at, and following
mm.
that path versus trying to follow the path that they think everybody else thinks that they should be on.
And some people are okay being really good at the task and skill set that
Oh
they
yeah,
are really good at,
yeah,
and they get promoted without really their passion or interest in being promoted, right? And
yeah,
I always raise my hand when this conversation comes up because being vulnerable on the podcast, I was the sales leader who could hit goal, hit numbers, and motivate people. Well, it makes perfect sense for him to be a sales manager and have a team. Now it does 5 years, 6, 7 years later, as I'm more comfortable with that
yeah.
role and have failed a lot. But 5, 6 years ago, when that first happened, I had no understanding of what it would take to manage 4, 5, 6 different people in their roles just because I knew how to prospect and hunt. And
Right.
it was never communicated to me. It was just, hey, you're going to take on this opportunity. You're going to take on this role. Okay, great. Let me try and fail forward. But there are a lot of avenues where that wouldn't have worked. And I love the traction model in terms of the right seats. And you talked about culture, but also understanding, let's not put names in these seats yet. What does this actual role need? What is this
Yeah.
responsibility? And then can Alec fit into that seat versus saying, okay, here's Alec and we're plugging him into a seat. Let's
Right.
find the seat and really understand what skill set, what responsibilities do they have, what responsibility do they have to the organization and to the people that report into them. And like you said, am I at that level or am I not? And that's okay, but we have to be willing to have that career path conversation. And
Yeah.
and that's a gap that I think right now just exists across any of the industries that we work within. It's just not happening.
Yeah, the career conversation is a tough one because think of if you're a manager and you're having a conversation with an employee, and the career their career that they have in mind doesn't include working at your company in
Yeah.
5 years. That's a
Yep.
it's a hard thing to tell somebody, and because you know that that will impact potentially your career path at that company. And so,
Right.
um, I I'm a big believer of whenever somebody joins an organization that I'm a part of, they're eventually going to leave in some way, shape, or form. They're going to retire. They're going to quit. I'm going to fire them, right? Or some other mix in there. Whenever that
Yep.
eventual departure happens, and I hope it doesn't happen, but whenever it does happen, uh, I want them to leave with more skills and more capabilities than they came into the job with, even if it's a 6 month stint.
Mm,
And so I'm very proud of all the people that have come to Greencastle and left on their own accord to go do entrepreneurship, business ownership, to jump into the passion that they've been trying to do, because that means that while they were at Greencastle, they potentially got additional skills that allowed them to make that jump. And that's, to me, that's a success. And one of the key things that I've tried to pound into everybody on the team, all the way through the entire organization, is that you have to be a leadership factory. You have to, when you're looking at your people, if you don't have identified leaders at every level, and they're second and they're third, then you're really doing, one, the organization a disservice, but also you're doing your leaders a disservice, because how are they ever going to take a vacation? How are they ever going to take time off if they can't trust a secondary person to fill their role temporarily? And
mm,
the third belief I have around all this is that if I refuse to delegate and I continue to want to do all these tasks myself, I'm robbing the other generation, the other levels of leadership, of valuable experience that they could be getting under my supervision. And so, one of the key points of attraction is to delegate and elevate. And essentially, the way I look at it is, you want to delegate yourself out of a job and
mm.
allow the organization to work at the right levels. And when I first purchased Greencastle, that we had no admin staff, we had no HR, no nothing. Everything went through the partners, and that was a self-limiting factor, because all the sales were the partners, but also service delivery. So we were on a roller coaster ride. We had Because we focused on sales, we were doing really well, and then because we were doing the projects, the sales started slumping. So we were just on this roller coaster. And one of the first things I did was remove all the admin tasks that I didn't want to do. I hired, her name's Alicia, and she's been with us ever since. And she's really good at them, and I was okay at them. And so that
Yeah.
was always my goal, is every time I hired a person, whatever I was doing and that they're taking over from me, I wanted them to be 10x what I could do, because that's just good business. Why would I hire somebody that's worse than me? Because I wasn't even doing a great job on some of these things anyway. So it's like,
Mm,
and so by doing that, you create a culture where there's high accountability. People are really good at their jobs, and they really take ownership, and they truly feel bad if something falls through the cracks. And thankfully,
mm,
in our organization, very little falls through the cracks, but when it does, they take ownership and they say, "Hey, that's my bad," and we'll fix it. But because they're high accountability, they're not like, "Well, it's his problem, or her problem." Everybody's
Right.
like, "Yep, okay, that was me. I got it," and we move forward. We don't hold it over their heads as a guilt trip or anything like that. We might
Mm.
bring it up when we're having cigars on the patio as a joke of like, "Oh, remember that time?" But it's never unless it's a systemic and consistent behavior. It's never used against that person.
Right. Which comes back to the culture that you put in place and that you live
Yeah,
in on a day-to-day basis. I want to go back to this leadership factory because it's also it's future proofing your organization. It's succession planning in real time. It's developing top individuals. It when we talk about that at Velocity, one of the pushbacks that we get, and I just want to throw it to you and I want to hear your thoughts is, hey, we develop them and then they're going to leave. And
what
I
happens
always,
if you don't develop and they stay?
and they say,
That's the classic conundrum, right?
right. And I want to, I want to hear your thought process on this because my answer always goes to if we don't develop them and they stay. And also, I think one of the best things for an organization is if you develop, let's say they develop the heck out of Alec McChesney and Alec McChesney leaves and becomes top person at
Yeah,
superstar company. That's really good for this
yeah.
organization to say, hey, we promoted Alec and he's now here, or we promoted Joe and he's now. That's a great thing for the organization to be able to sell from a recruitment standpoint. But do you have any other thoughts on that, Joe? Or when you receive that pushback, is there something that you always go to or a story you tell that really resonates with you?
Yeah, I would say first off, if you've developed people and they leave, then that means they had a good experience with you. So they're more likely to say, "Hey, yeah, you should go look at this company," or give you referrals, or say, "Hey, you know what? You need their services. Why don't you go talk to this guy?" So that's the
Yeah.
first thing. And the second thing is none of these philosophies or approaches exist in a silo. I always refer to it as
Yeah.
the watch, right? So think of like a very expensive watch where you pull off the back and you have all these really tiny gears and springs and stuff, and every single gear has a purpose. Every single spring has a purpose to keep that exact time on that watch, and that's the same thing for a business. Is there should never be a spring or a gear in there that doesn't provide value to the company. So that's the first thing is I make sure that we're only focused in on the things that are going to make us a better company. And then two, every spring has to do its job. Every gear has to do its job, and that's where traction comes in with the quarterly rocks and
Mm.
setting expectations. And as you're doing that, you need to realize that certain people are okay with a job, just showing up 9 to 5, and some people really want to have a meteoric career a path. And an
Mm.
organization that can embrace both those is good as long as they're being held to a high accountable work product, right? The problem becomes is the person that doesn't necessarily want to move up through the leadership ranks is sometimes tolerated with their low work product, but we don't do that, right? So it's like you have to perform at a high accountability level, but you don't have to get promoted. That's if you want to, that's great. And to prove that, what we did is a couple years ago, we created the managing director track and the principal track at Greencastle. And so the managing director track is, think of it like a partner in a law firm, where not only do they have
Yeah.
a book of business, but they have to go out and find new stuff, and they have to. It's a sales role. It's a business development role. Where a principal is a track where somebody can get to a principal or senior principal level and just go do service delivery, just go do projects all day long, every day, because
Great.
that's what their passion is. And I think that's really lent to our retention. Again, since I bought the company in 19 to now, uh, I don't think we've lost a senior person over 5 years of tenure, except for potentially them jumping off to go do their own business or buy a business. And so I think
Mm,
that lends to, if you hold people accountable, regardless of whether they have career aspirations or if they're just there on a daily basis, if you hold them to high accountable work and high quality work products, then and everybody sees that you're doing that, then everybody understands the mission of the company is to continue doing that on a daily basis, and the low performers aren't going to be tolerated.
yeah. Well, I love the two different tracks that you have, but I want to put a bow on this portion of the conversation. Then we could talk a little bit about culture, people, systems. I As I ask that question, it just continues to hit me that the data shows us over and over again that if we invest in the people stay.
Yeah.
So the question of what happens if we invest in them and then they leave, it just really is a broken question.
Well,
And maybe
that's not a question leadership should ask. Like that's not a
should
leader,
ask at all.
right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's
It's a
like,
bad.
yeah. Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna
No,
say. I was
I'm
gonna
just.
say.
It's really frustrating when I
Yeah.
how many times you've seen that. It's a bad question. It's a bad thought process, and it's actually what leads people to leaving your organization
Right.
is having that
Just
thought process.
self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
believe so much in training and upskilling people that when a person joins Greencastle, they go through a month long of training to get their PMP, change management certification, Lean Six Sigma. They get a little Power BI experience in there as well. So before they even hit
That's
a
great.
client, they've gone through a month long of training, and they end up with several certifications that allows them to speak the language of our work environment, and then it's really
Mm,
on them to continue that path. But the idea that not training somebody is going to save me $1,000 here or there, it, it's really costing me probably 10x that if I don't train them, because of the rework and the redundancy and the lack of accountability and the slowdown of work. And it's so, by investing in people, and I can tell you from my direct experience, by investing in people and their careers, we have gone from a very good company to a great company. And we did that because we invested in our people, not only just skill sets but leadership, personal, right? We have one of the more liberal maternity policies. We have discretionary paid time off. We have all these things because we treat our people like adults and we expect them to act like adults.
whew. All right. Listen, we're at the halfway mark and I'm fired up right now, Joe. This is a great conversation. It's exactly what we wanted to have here. I've got one more line of questioning before we get into the rapid fire
Yeah.
leadership round. And it's about culture. We talked about people, but then you talked about if we get the people right, the processes come into place. And have had a couple of conversations on this podcast about culture being the combinations of people and systems and having them really be able to work together. And it seems like we talked about EOS, we talk about clarity, consistency, accountability. I want to just hear from you how you see the blend within culture of systems, process, and people, and how this really drives an organization forward.
Yeah, I define a system as the melding of the people in the process, right?
Mm,
Most companies, their processes are the amalgamation of multiple years of just tacking this on, doing this. Oh, we got to add that step. Very rarely does a company sit back and look at what they're trying to accomplish from start to finish and say, what are all the steps that occur? The real steps, not the steps that you think are happening, but the ones that people are actually taking. And if and it's so true. If you map all that out, honesty with everybody in the room, you can sit there and look at it and go, why are we doing that step? Why are we doing that step? Why don't we move that step forward? Well, because whenever quality control looks at this, we have to do another quality check at the end. Well, then maybe quality control is not doing their job. What is happening down here that's not happening to prevent it from occurring downstream in the process? And so,
mm,
our contracts are a good example. For a good year, every time a contract landed on my desk for a client, there would be errors. And I just got to the point where, like, I'm not going to look at another contract if it comes across my desk with another error. These are just very simple things that need to be put at the beginning of the process and fixed. And when we did look at the overall process, we found out that uh, the area where I thought somebody was supposed to be looking for these errors, they weren't. And it was because they had the understanding that it was my job to find the errors. And so once we clarified that, it was like I never saw an error again. And
Mm,
but that was just a small disconnect, and that happens all the time, over 100 times a day in any business, just because of think of all the moving pieces. And so when you meld the people and the systems together, the processes together, and you build a system that doesn't rely on a single Herculean effort of a person, then you have a business. If you don't do that, you have a business, but it's not something you could uh, walk away from for a week. If
mm,
it relies on you or a key person, you have to build a system, systems that are bigger than individual efforts. And so, one of the things that we have adopted recently is I learned from Elon Musk is on his rockets, every part has a name to it. Like he could point to a tile and say, "That's Bob's job. Oh, that's Bill's job."
yeah.
And so we did the similar thing, which is taking the traction, identifying your core processes. We took it one step further, and we assigned names to everything in those. Like who's even like who puts the flag at half mast? Well, that's
Mm,
Justin's job, and Justin knows it's his job, right? And so uh, when all that happens, and people know exactly what's expected from them, very rarely do they not do what they're supposed to do. And
yeah.
a lot of I say it all the time. Anger and frustration are born out of missed expectations. I have an expectation that you're going to do this job, and you don't do it, so I'm getting angry with you, or I'm getting frustrated, or I expect to get paid every Friday, and if that doesn't happen, of course I'm going to be angry or frustrated, right? So the sooner you can stop that anger and frustration from occurring from missed expectations, the better. And so that's why
Mm,
conversations around career and work product, they should be happening on a weekly, or at the worst a monthly basis. And
yeah.
that's what we built into Greencastle, is a very very active feedback loop that takes out the emotion. It's not in ideally the leader who's having the conversation with whoever needs to hear it, they're getting it from a position of care and love, because that person wants you to be better. And when it's
Mm,
coming from a position of fear, that's when you get the people that are like, oh no, I'm not going to say anything. I want him to screw up so I look better. And that
yeah.
those people you shouldn't tolerate at all.
Yeah. I want to call it a couple of things there. The ability to set the right expectation, the ability to be clear with what success looks like goes back to your call out of did you show them what right looked like, and being
Yep.
able to set clear expectations. It goes back to Kim Scott and clear is kind and that entire thought process. It also is a real good blend with traction. My first agency was an EOS implementation shop, and one of the negative pieces of feedback that EOS gets is it removes the human emotional element of a business. And our counter to that was always your culture adds the human element
Yeah.
and this is the system, right? And if they know we're doing it with empathy and care and passion, then we can put the system in place on top of that. The system is not meant to strip all of that away. And then the third, I'm going to give a shout out to one of my favorite books by Dan Heath called Upstream, which is all about solving problems well before
Yeah.
they become massive issues. And I think
Yeah.
it goes to your point about the contracts. A lot of times, if we just look at the process, we see, oh wow, it's actually not really a massive problem. It's just a disconnect, or
Yeah.
it's an email exchange that went awry just a little bit, and we can solve that problem before it becomes a massive issue. So I loved each of those examples. I do want to ask you. You mentioned the naming of the task and of the
Yeah.
solution, and as you pair that with delegate and elevate within traction, is that something where if Justin's out, we know who has Justin's
Yep.
back? Is that
Yep.
something where you have kind of that built-in process as well?
Yeah, I think that's just a mindset we learned in the military. Is one is none, two is one, and three is too many, right? And so every action, or every process in we call it the PAT tool. Every process in the PAT tool has a primary and secondary. And so if,
Mm,
for example, uh, Jeff's out on vacation and we need to get an invoice out, we have a secondary. Now they might need
yeah,
some guidance and help because they know kind of how to do it because that's not their primary job. So we help them, but everybody has a primary and secondary. And so
that's great.
it's an important part of a mindset that allows for people to go on vacation and not worry because
Mm,
I'm a big proponent of you need time off, right? You need to recharge. You need to turn off the Teams notifications and your chats and all that kind of stuff, and just not have to worry. And I think with specifically with Red Leviathan and Greencastle, I think we've built great systems that allow for that to happen. Now, as a leader, just you're naturally going to check and be in there anyways, but
yeah, yeah.
you're monitoring versus meddling. And
Mm,
yeah, the other thing that I do, I think is extremely important for almost any leader is take tactical absences, right? So if, like, for example, we were implementing traction at RedLev and I would pick certain days not to be at the level 10 meeting in order
yeah.
to, as the visionary, to let the integrator own it, but also for him to kind of struggle through it and then to learn it.
Mm.
And if I was there to save him, which he didn't need saving, but if I was there and I was his
If
safety
you
net,
jumped in, yeah.
he would never learn and grow. And so I do that. I've done that throughout my career a lot. Is I would give somebody a new task. The way we learned it in the teams is you see it, you do it, and then you teach it, right? And so if you see it and you let the person do it a couple of times, then you should, one, let them do it, and two, give them a few opportunities without you looking over their shoulder to really try to do it in their own way. And then that
Mm,
brings me to back to the radical candor and correcting behavior. A lot of leaders think that a style difference is a behavior that needs to be corrected when really they should just be looking at substantive differences in the outcome that they were looking for. So let me explain that, which
mm,
is, let's say I'm in charge of painting cars, right? And I learned from somebody to paint the cars top to bottom, boom, and that's the way it is. And but the goal is ultimately to have a nice clean car with the right color paint. I train somebody else and they find that they do it better by going from front to back. Product is as good or if not better than what I did. Should I correct them and say, no, you're supposed to go from top to bottom? Or do I let them add their flair, add their, little bit
mm.
of, personality to it and let them go with it? And that's a struggle, I think, for a lot of leaders is because the way I do it is the right way, no matter what.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they get frustrated when they delegate and the person doesn't necessarily do it exactly the same way. You see it in relationships too, but you see it in work a lot. But really, what a leader should be asking is, am I getting the outcome that I'm desiring? And
Yeah.
if that person, because I've been surprised more times than once, where I've shown somebody how to do it, and they go, "Okay, great," and then what's the intent? What are you really trying to get at? And I tell them, "Hey, this is what we're trying to do." And then they find a way to do it faster, better, and why should I get pissed off if they're not doing exactly the way I did it when they can do it in a shorter period of time at a higher quality? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's where having guardrails and having a system and a process. Hey, here's the process, here's the system. Within it, play within that sandbox. The way that
Yeah.
I might get to 5 million is different than the way Joe might get to 5 million, or the way that we might do a task is different. But if we're doing it within the same methodology, the same mission, vision, values, all of the above, then heck yeah, that's what makes an organization great. So Joe, we're at the final part here where we go into some rapid fire questions. Before we do that, I want to give you a chance. There's no question here. This wasn't in the outline, but I want you to talk, if you're comfortable, just about the veteran aspect of the organizations. You mentioned the largest veteran led organization in the country until someone stops you. Why is that so important to you? What makes it unique? What fires you up? We want to I want to shed a light on that, and certainly as I think back to my conversation with John Stenberg and saying, hey, there's more veteran leaders that we can interview on this podcast. I want to hear from you, Joe, and just kind of why that's been so pivotal to the organization's success as well.
Yeah, that's a good question because we years ago when we were first thinking about how should we market ourselves, we marketed ourselves as an all veteran company. And veteran owned, right? And we didn't really get a lot of traction in the consulting world around it. So one of the key shifts is I said, let's just be a really good consulting firm that are all veterans, and
Yeah.
versus an all veteran firm that does consulting. And so when we made
Mm.
that shift, we really started to hone in on the quality and all that kind of stuff. And it was even better than I expected because everybody was a veteran and they had that shared experience. And because the other side of it is there a lot of people when they're looking for jobs, they're not willing to put up with a lot of BS or a lot of, oh, this is
Mm.
broke or that kind of thing. And a key mantra of mine is every organization is screwed up. Every organization. It's just a matter of whether what's screwed up is acceptable to you. And so Greencastle is screwed up, but the things that are screwed up are acceptable to veterans because they just know it doesn't matter. It's just like, whatever. I'm still getting paid and doing a good job, right? And yeah, okay, we could have done that better. Let's do it better next time, but let's move on. And they have that mentality of it's not the end of the world if something doesn't get done. And
Mm.
they also have a high level of accountability because I guarantee you, every single buddy, every person that's worked for me has been called out on the carpet by a senior officer at some point and been chewed out, and you know how it feels. And so it's like, we understand when something falls through the crack, and we do everything that we can do to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. All right, let's thank you for going down that pathway, Joe. It's I think it was a question that I wanted to make sure that I asked, and certainly something that we want to share as well. But I do have to ask you the 4 rapid fire questions before we get you out of here. 30 seconds for each answer. Question number 1: what is one leadership habit that you rely on every day, no matter what?
Oh, planning my week, planning my day, and so
Mm,
I have a planner. And it went from when I was in charge of the day to day, from a huge list and a lot of stuff to do, to now I can do it on a weekly basis. But I look ahead and I plan things to make sure that that I'm supporting the teams as they need.
yeah. I love it. I love it. What is question number 2? What is the most underrated skill that a leader needs to succeed today?
Decision making and velocity of action. Sometimes people get so
Mm,
wrapped around a decision that they want to talk to this person or talk to the group. Hey, what do you guys think? And in a lot of ways, the role of a leader is just to make the decision and deal with the consequences, and then have velocity of action behind it. If you make a decision and there nothing happens, people see it and it starts to erode the organization.
yeah. I love pairing the being able to make the decision with the velocity of action and being able to run with it. On the opposite side of that, we're going for question number 3. What is one thing that you believe great leaders should stop doing?
Focusing on things outside their control. I'm a big fan of stoicism, and I'm also in a Vistage group, so a lot of conversations are around the economy and tariffs and Iran and the cartels, and it's like I can't do anything about that. All I can do is really build a business that's resilient and going to be inoculated from that stuff as much as possible. But if at the end of the day a nuclear bomb goes off in Philly, what can I do?
Yeah. I've had a couple of conversations about the world, the market this week already, and it's only Tuesday. And
Yeah.
so much of it is, hey,
What
we
are you
got to
going
be
to do?
proactive. There's, yeah, COVID changed everything, but it happened in 2008, happened in 2001, happened in, the
Yeah.
businesses that are proactive, the businesses that have the right people in the systems are the ones that can prevail. And to your point, when something happens that eliminates that possibility, then something happens that eliminates that possibility, and it's outside of your control regardless.
Yep.
So, I love it. Question number 4, last one here on the rapid fire. What's the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
I learned this in Buds SEAL training when I was going through. don't confuse effort with performance. And so it goes back to some of our conversation of I don't care how hard you try, just get it done, right? And
Mm,
it's a very Gen X way of looking at things. The millennials don't necessarily like that, but it is the only thing that matters is outcomes. And if you've clearly defined the outcomes, then you're going to have a good organization. And so,
mm.
um, yeah, don't confuse effort with performance.
I think back to I used to give over effort in high school basketball. Ball's already out of bounds, and then you would see me diving. And I finally had a coach come up to me and say, "Everybody sees that, and that's not what we're looking for here."
Right.
And I haven't heard it said that
Yeah.
way. Don't confuse effort with outcomes. I love
Well,
that. Um,
in that scenario, you could be getting upset because you're putting out this extra effort that nobody's recognizing when the
yes,
extra
yeah,
effort isn't needed. And so
yeah.
that's good that the coach said something to you to kind of be like, "Hey, look, dude, don't do that."
Yeah, it's not needed. It's not needed. Oh gosh. All right. Last question of the day, and then we'll get you out of here, Joe. Who is a leader? Who's a leader that you believe that we should interview next? Could be inside an organization, somebody that you've worked with, somebody that you know consider a peer. Who is that leader that the Activating Greatness audience can learn from?
Uh, Nick Learman comes to mind. He runs Team Foster. He's also an Army JAG, and he's grown his organization from a small local thing to now a regional organization that provides service dogs to veterans, and they raise
Mm,
a ton of money to do that. And so it's a not-for-profit,
awesome.
but he's been the leader of that organization for a while. Him and his wife Erica do a really good job of looking out for the veterans. They're both veterans, and creating just a program that gives dogs to veterans that deserve it.
I love it. You said it's Nick and Erica, right?
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. I will absolutely. I'll follow up with you to try to get some contact information. I always share the video of you saying, the guest saying the nice words about them, and we'll try to get them on the podcast. I think maybe we could have them both join, which would be a lot of fun.
get them on a
Joe,
good day
I
when
knew
they're
this.
not fighting. Just kidding.
Yeah, it ends up being counseling the entire time. Put them on the spot. Joe, this is when we had our prep call about a month ago, I knew this episode was one that I was going to be really excited about. Joe on our team messaged me over and over again. Gosh, Joe is so smart. This episode's gonna be great. He was not wrong. I was not wrong. This was exactly what we were looking for. I think everybody that's listening to this not only learned a lot, but have a lot of actionable insights that they can implement with their team. Want to give you, the microphone one last time. Any final thoughts or takeaways that you have for the audience?
Uh, Trust the EOS process and hold your people accountable and reward them when they do well. It's
Mm.
really simple. It's not hard. It's tedious.
Yeah. It's we overcomplicate it, right? I
Yeah.
love even the holding them accountable and reward them when they do well. We overcomplicate it and we make it harder than it needs to be. Everybody that is listening to this, you're probably thinking Joe's episode is your favorite one yet. Absolutely connect with Joe on LinkedIn. Go look at Greencastle, look at Red Lev. Make sure that you follow their work. Connect with Joe on LinkedIn. Let him know that the Activating Greatness podcast is where you discovered him. If you did love this episode, leave it a 5-star review. We're 25 episodes in now. Can't believe it. It's already March 31st as we're recording this. We've got 80 episodes in the plans for 2026. Every Monday and Thursday, we're releasing Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Velocity Advisory Group, wherever you get your podcast. The only reason we're able to do this is because of unbelievable guests like Joe, but also because of the audience that continues to ask for this type of content, that ask for the stories that Joe and our other guests are sharing. So make sure you subscribe, leave a 5-star review, download all of the episodes on the platform of your choosing. And thank you, as always, for being a part of a community of leaders who refuse to settle for good enough. Joe, thank you so much. Can't say enough how much fun I had on this episode, and really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share with me and to share with the Activating Greatness audience.
No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And as always, we'll see you on the next episode of Activating Greatness. Have a great day.